Hello, my name is Chris Parham, and this is my project for the DMI Fall 2021 semester, Design Seminar 1. And the name of my project, Analog versus Digital, is Analog Filmmaking versus Digital Filmmaking. And is it about the artistic vision or about the technology? And my concept deals with analog filmmaking compared to digital filmmaking, of which a lot of filmmakers these days are doing a lot of their best work, actually. And what we're going to talk about is the history of analog filmmaking, the history of digital filmmaking, and how they intertwine together in terms of digital filmmaking being not necessarily cheaper, but looks better, but at the same time, a lot of famous producers and directors prefer the old style dealing with analog film. So we're going to start off with our very first slide. And again, my project deals with the transition between analog filmmaking and digital filmmaking and how directors and producers are using digital more than film, but also some artists prefer analog because of their vision for their films. And the questions that are going to be asked deal with what was gained in the transition from analog to digital, who gained and who lost in the transition, what was lost in the transition from analog to digital. And what we're talking about basically is how the art form of filmmaking has changed dramatically, and also how a lot of this specific project deals a lot too with the psychology of filmmaking, the psychology basically of how people. I have a lot of doing a lot of research dealing with how artists and how researchers are dealing with how people view analog films compared to digital films and the different emotions that arise from specific tests that researchers have been doing for the past few years, dealing with how people approach an analog film when they're told that it is, and how they approach a digital film, and how also the different types of emotions that can come with those specific points. Dealing with digital and dealing with going from analog to digital, that is. So my project is going to deal a lot with how I will be able to, for instance, showing a timeline between the transition between analog filmmaking and digital filmmaking. And of course, I'm not going to go through all of these because you guys can see them for yourselves. But it basically, my project is going to be dealing with how the analog changed to the digital and the differences that are left with the analog that people prefer, and the differences that are happening with digital filmmaking, which people, especially a lot of short filmmakers are making that don't have large budgets and so on. So as you can see from the beginning from my timeline, going back to between 1887 to 1894, the first successful short cinematographic presentations were established. The biggest popular breakthrough of the technology came in 1895 with the first projected movies that lasted longer than 10 seconds. So as you can see going through this list, there's a lot of different things that happen and innovations that happen going, especially with digital film, where some filmmakers prefer analog over digital, and that deals with my whole subject, dealing with the whole idea of, are they looking for a artistic vision with regular film compared to digital film, or does digital film offer the same things as much as the analog does? And what we're looking at here, for instance, are digital film cameras used on top 100 US grossing films between 2002 and 2015. And as you can see to your left as well, to your right, bottom right, you'll see UK cinema screens, and also you can see it says digital and film, and the same thing to your left on the bottom left where it says shooting format of top 100 US grossing films, and digital or film. So that's the psychology that's going on with when they make films these days. The bulk of them are shot on digital, and do they take away from the vision of the director and the producer? And also, cost has a lot to do with it as well. So my project is going to be dealing with the psychology of the psychology of the two in terms of analog and digital. Tests that are done on viewing audiences by researchers as well, who are talking about what does the film in film compared to digital, what kind of emotions are being displayed through the project. And I guess it just depends too on the subject matter as well. And what I'm going to be dealing with my project is I have to do the research that talks about um, the the role that digital has plays the role that both analog and digital play on our culture, how we see films, how art is displayed through different types of work, and also too, as you can see to your left, you're seeing percentage of top grossing films shot on digital cameras by ARRI, which is a company that makes digital cameras, and the percentage of top grossing films shot on digital cameras by RED. And that's also, I believe, a digital camera company as well. And then to your right, you see companies behind the digital cameras used to shoot the top 200 grossing live action feature films. And that's a lot of it's a lot of stuff. It's really a lot of stuff just because the technology has gotten so much better. But my project is going to be dealing specifically with how do I, as an artist, look at the film, look at how, separating the difference between what does analog bring and what does digital bring, what does digital take away and what does analog take away, and how do we separate the two in terms of um, which one is better, which one has a future, does analog film still have a future, but also too, we also have to deal with the fact that movie theaters are being digitized, excuse me, because of the technology of the film. Now, before, when a lot of film rolls were in theaters, they were heavy, they were flammable, but in digital, it's all on a floppy disk, it's all on a flash drive or any kind of drive that you use specifically, and it's like so much easier. But does it take away from the artistic vision of the artist? Does it take away from the designer, or excuse me, the producer or director having specific, having a specific, like a Martin Scorsese or a Spike Lee, what do they prefer? What works for them? What type of type of advantage does digital film have over analog, and what type of advantage does analog have over digital? So these are the questions that I'm going to be asking, and also my resources as well. The different resources that I have here deal with an early history, for instance, of digital cinema, film versus cinema, digital versus film on Hollywood films, film versus digital comparisons, and so on. So what's interesting about this is that I have a bunch of different resources dealing with both filmmakers, what filmmakers prefer digital, what filmmakers prefer analog, the cost. That's a big thing these days, especially because making a film, excuse me, with analog costs you 3 times as much as it would for digital, but the equipment for digital is 3 times as expensive as the cost of film. So how do I draw the line between saying this one works and this one doesn't work? And that's why my focus again is going to be on separating analog and digital, and what one gains, which medium gains something and which medium loses something. Does it go both ways in terms of like, do, and primarily too, it has a lot to do with an artistic vision. So again, like I said, I have to do psychology studies. I'm looking for research. I'm looking for especially scientific research that talks about people's attitudes and moods during watching a film, and depending on the film too, whether or not it's a romance or whether or not it's a crime film, and so on and so forth. What are the emotions that people get when they look at digital compared to analog? And if they're told these, if they're, for instance, in a controlled setting, for instance, a psychological controlled setting, and they said this was done in analog, how does it make you feel? And then this one was done in digital, how does this make you feel? And what are the correlations between the two? And again, the name of my project is called Analog Filmmaking versus Digital Filmmaking. Is it about the artistic vision or the cost or the technology? I'll say both of those, cost and technology, for both of those. And again, my project will be digging deep basically into the differences between this artistic format and then this other artistic format, and how does the story get told? Does the story get told through the grains? Certain directors find this, they find that, and so on. So I'm really looking forward to this project, and thank you very much.